Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Phyllis thinks she knows Michael's secret in Amanda's new Lily mission. While Phyllis Summers believes Michael Baldwin has a secret, Amanda Sinclair will receive a new mission involving Lily Winters. Now that he works for Kane Ashby, Michael will try his hardest to patch things up with Phyllis at the park. But when Michael pretends he got the position to mend their friendship, Phyllis will be dubious. When Michael acknowledges that he is keeping Lauren Fenmore Baldwin in the dark about his new job, Phyllis will become even more suspicious. Phyllis will want to know what Michael is concealing, as she will realize there is more to the story. Phyllis will promise not to trust Michael if he doesn't come clean. Kane will tell Amanda that Billy Abbott will only believe he is in charge of the AI software when they meet on his train. In actuality, Kane will continue to have the final say on what such program can accomplish. Additionally, Kane will inquire about the status of Amanda's relationship with Lily Winters. Kane will encourage Amanda to turn that into a friendship and get information for him when she acknowledges that Lily still feels some pity for her because of all the drama surrounding her adultery with Devon Winters and Abby Newman. Kane will want Amanda to learn the truth about Lily's feelings so that she might eventually appreciate the positive aspects of him. Soon after, Amanda stops Devon and Lily at Society to begin the first part of that task. Amanda will insist on a private meeting with Lily after bringing up Kane's regret for the twins' suffering. On Monday's episode of Y&R, Claire Newman will then brief Victoria Newman on Kyle's most recent missteps, including the covert agreement she recently learnt about with Victor Newman. During her mourning over Cole Howard, Claire will also complain that Kyle is too possessive and tries to steer her away from Holden Novak, who was a terrific buddy. Although Victoria will not condone Kyle's errors, she will acknowledge that he may be making them out of fear of losing Claire. When Nate Hastings enters the coffee shop and sees Kyle, Kyle will question whether Nate wants to hit him because of what transpired with Audra Charles. No blows will be exchanged since Nate will also view Kyle as a victim. They will both agree that it's best that Nate moves on from Audra, even if Kyle will detest that he's having trouble with his split. When the conversation shifts to Holden, Nate will essentially confirm Kyle's unfavorable opinions about him and acknowledge that he believes Holden is bad news. Victoria and Claire will join Nate and Kyle in their talk whenever they arrive. Claire will approach Kyle in private and demand information since she will believe they were discussing Audra and Holden. Claire will believe she can take care of herself, but Kyle will admit that Nate shares his opinion that he shouldn't trust Holden. These days, Claire finds it difficult to trust Kyle. Kyle will understand that he's messing up, but he'll say it's just because he's afraid of losing Claire. That will support Victoria's previous analysis of the circumstances. Phyllis Summers had always prided herself on being a woman who could sniff out the truth before anyone else even realized there was a secret to uncover, and in recent days that instinct had been gnawing at her more than ever as she observed Michael Baldwin, the sharp-witted lawyer who had suddenly taken a new role working under Kane Ashby, moving through Genoa City with an energy that didn't quite add up, an enthusiasm for the position that felt more manufactured than genuine, and though Michael had tried his hardest to patch things up with Phyllis in the park with casual talk about new beginnings and fresh alliances, she saw right through the veneer and recognized that something deeper was at play, something he wasn't telling her. And when he went so far as to admit that he hadn't even told Lauren Fenmore Baldwin about his new job, Phyllis's suspicions only deepened, because if there was one person Michael never lied to or kept in the dark, it was his wife. And for him to be deliberately hiding this detail from Lauren spoke volumes, setting off alarm bells that Phyllis couldn't ignore. So when he claimed that his only motivation in joining Kane's camp was to smooth over their fractured friendship, Phyllis didn't buy it for a second, instead pressing him harder with pointed looks and sharp-edged questions that left Michael visibly squirming. And though he tried to charm his way out of it, Phyllis finally put her foot down and made it clear that if he didn't come clean, if he didn't trust her enough to reveal what he was concealing, then she would promise herself never to trust him again, drawing a firm line that showed just how serious she was about getting to the truth. All while Michael's eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt, an unspoken acknowledgement that she wasn't wrong to sense a larger scheme simmering beneath the surface, one that tied him far more tightly to Kane's machinations than he wanted her to believe. At the same time, Amanda Sinclair found herself stepping into yet another morally murky assignment as Kane, ever the strategist with a knack for bending people to his will, pulled her aside and made it clear that her connection with Lily Winters was a resource he intended to exploit. telling Amanda that Billy Abbott would never truly buy into the illusion that Kane was in full control of the new AI software project unless Amanda did her part to gather intelligence, to bridge the emotional divide with Lily and extract the kind of inside knowledge that could tip the balance in Kane's favor. Because in reality Kane had no intention of relinquishing the reins. He would always hold the final say on what that technology could accomplish, and Billy, for all his stubbornness, needed to be maneuvered into believing otherwise, which meant Amanda had to get closer to Lily than ever before, a task made complicated by their fraught history but also made possible by the lingering pity Lily still carried for Amanda due to the chaotic fallout of Amanda's scandalous involvement with Devon Winters and Abby Newman. Kane, with his sly confidence, pushed Amanda to see the opportunity. If Lily still pitied her, that was an opening, a crack in the armor that could be widened into trust, and once trust was secured, Amanda could probe into Lily's true feelings, into whether she still saw Kane as a lost cause or whether she might, just might, begin to appreciate the more positive aspects of him if guided toward that perspective. And though Amanda felt conflicted, aware that this was less about reconciliation and more about manipulation, she agreed to test the waters, which is how she soon found herself at Society, intercepting Devon and Lily mid-conversation and strategically steering things until she could request a private meeting with Lily, dropping subtle hints about Kane's regrets and his remorse for the pain he had caused, especially to the twins, setting the stage for a heart-to-heart that would serve as the first step in Kane's carefully crafted plan. Meanwhile, across town, Claire Newman was pouring out her frustrations to Victoria Newman, her voice tinged with grief over Cole Howard's passing as she also vented about Kyle Abbott's increasingly possessive behavior, his desperate attempts to pull her away from Holden Novak, the friend who had become a rare source of comfort and understanding in these difficult days. And as Claire revealed that she had even discovered a covert agreement Kyle had struck with Victor Newman, Victoria listened. With a mixture of sympathy and restraint, unwilling to excuse Kyle's mistakes yet perceptive enough to point out that much of his erratic behavior stemmed from fear. The fear of losing Claire, the fear of watching someone he loved slip away into another man's orbit. Victoria's insight might have softened Claire's anger a little, but the tension remained, especially once Nate Hastings walked into Crimson Lights and found himself face-to-face with Kyle, the air thick with unspoken animosity given their shared history with Audra Charles. And though Kyle half-jokingly asked if Nate planned to punch him for what had gone down, Nate surprised him by admitting that he didn't see Kyle as the sole villain in the story, that he too had been burned by Audra's games. And in that moment the two men reached a tentative truce, agreeing that moving on from Audra was the best course even if Kyle still bristled with resentment over how things had unraveled. Yet, when the subject of Holden Novak arose, Nate didn't hold back from confirming Kyle's worst suspicions, acknowledging that there was something about Holden that seemed like bad news. A judgment that only reinforced Kyle's protectiveness over Claire, so when Victoria and Claire eventually joined them at the table, Claire quickly picked up on the shift in tone, her instincts telling her that they had been discussing both Audra and Holden. And she cornered Kyle in private to demand answers, insisting that she didn't need him, or anyone, dictating who she could or couldn't trust. Kyle, rattled but honest, admitted that even Nate had backed up his opinion that Holden was untrustworthy, but Claire, struggling with her ability to trust Kyle at all these days, remained skeptical, feeling smothered by his need to control the narrative. And though Kyle confessed that his blunders came only from a place of fear of losing her, Claire wasn't sure if that was enough to mend the growing rift, even as Victoria's earlier assessment echoed in the background, underscoring the tragic irony of the situation. That Kyle's desperate attempts to hold on might be the very thing driving Claire away. And so, as the threads of Genoa City's drama wove together on this tense Monday episode, Phyllis stood on the cusp of exposing Michael's secret. Amanda embarked on her precarious mission to rebuild ties with Lily under Kane's manipulative guidance. Claire grappled with grief, mistrust, and possessiveness in her tangled relationships, and the Newman, Abbott, Winters, and Ashby families all found themselves circling around one another in a whirlwind of secrets, schemes, regrets, and fragile hopes. Each character teetering on the brink of decisions that could either lead to redemption or plunge them deeper into betrayal, reminding everyone that in this town, no truth stayed buried for long and no alliance was ever as simple as it seemed. As Phyllis Summers continued to observe Michael Baldwin with the keen eye of someone who had learned long ago that appearances could be deceptive, her mind raced with questions she couldn't yet voice aloud, each one twisting around the next like a Gordian knot of suspicion and fear. She had seen Michael navigate the treacherous waters of Genoa City before, had witnessed his legal cunning and relentless drive to achieve what he set out to accomplish, yet the way he skirted the edges of honesty. Now, the subtle hesitations in his speech, the almost imperceptible avoidance of eye contact when she pressed him for answers, all told her that the new role with Kane Ashby was more than just a career move. It was a calculated choice that he had deliberately kept from Lauren, a decision layered with motivations she couldn't fully decipher, and the more she considered it, the more she realized that Michael's attempt to mend things between them at the park was not entirely sincere, that there was a carefully constructed facade meant to placate her while shielding the truth, and Phyllis, whose instincts were finely tuned to detect such duplicity, felt the familiar thrill and dread that came with knowing she was on the verge of uncovering a secret that could shift the delicate balance of trust and power in her life. Meanwhile, Amanda Sinclair had begun to implement Kane's instructions with meticulous care, her mind balancing on a knife's edge as she approached Lily Winters at Society, navigating the conversation with precision so as not to alert her to the underlying motives that Kane had dictated, and as she steered the dialogue toward Kane's supposed regrets over the twins, she watched for every flicker of expression, every subtle inflection in Lily's voice, because these were the markers Kane had emphasized, small admissions of feeling that could reveal the true nature of Lily's perception of him. And in Amanda's mind, each word she uttered, each carefully crafted statement, was a chess move in a game she didn't entirely trust herself to play, yet she couldn't afford to falter, not when Kane's expectations were so exacting and the stakes so high. She sensed Lily's lingering pity, the delicate empathy that had survived the storm of past betrayals, and Amanda knew that this pity could either open a door to trust or close it forever. So she approached with a combination of humility and strategic friendliness, referencing Kane's remorse not as a personal apology but as a factual acknowledgement, a subtle probe into how much Lily still held against him, and she carefully observed Lily's reaction, noting every hesitation, every moment of softness or guardedness, recording mentally the cues that would inform Kane's next steps, while also internally debating the ethical boundaries she was towing, because though she was technically executing Kane's plan, Amanda couldn't ignore the moral weight of manipulating a woman's feelings under the guise of friendship. Simultaneously, back in another corner of the city, Claire Newman's grief over Cole Howard mingled with a rising exasperation toward Kyle Abbott's controlling tendencies, and as she confided in Victoria, she let slip her frustration over Kyle's insistence on steering her away from Holden Novak, revealing the tension between her desire for independence and Kyle's protective, albeit possessive, instincts, and Victoria, ever the observer, acknowledged that while Kyle's methods were flawed and sometimes overbearing, they often stemmed from fear of losing someone he loved, fear that his choices might inadvertently push Claire further away, and in this acknowledgement, a subtle understanding emerged between the women, a recognition that love, even when poorly executed, was still love, complicated and messy though it might be. In the midst of this, Nate Hastings entered the coffee shop, his presence sparking a complex interplay of histories and alliances, as he faced Kyle, who instinctively braced for confrontation, suspecting that Nate's anger over past events with Audra Charles might ignite in physical violence, but instead, Nate surprised him by offering a calm, measured perspective, suggesting that while the past had hurt them both, lingering resentment was ultimately unproductive, and in this fragile truce, Kyle began to see a reflection of his own struggles, the ways in which fear and hurt had clouded judgment, making it difficult to separate protection from control. And as their conversation progressed, the topic naturally shifted to Holden Novak, whose presence loomed like a silent question mark over both Kyle's and Claire's lives. And Nate's frank admission that he shared Kyle's concerns about Holden reinforced Kyle's protective instincts, even as it complicated his already strained relationship with Claire, adding another layer to the intricate web of tension, loyalty, and doubt that seemed to define the Abbott-Newman dynamic. While these parallel dramas unfolded, Phyllis's suspicion of Michael deepened, fueled by subtle observations she could barely articulate. The way he lingered on certain topics, the careful phrasing of his explanations, the avoidance of direct answers when she sought clarity about his motives, all of which suggested that the truth was being carefully curated, hidden behind layers of plausibility, and Phyllis, whose patience had limits even as her curiosity was boundless, felt a growing urgency to compel Michael to reveal what he knew he could no longer conceal, because in Genoa City, secrets had a way of escaping, of erupting when least expected, and Phyllis had learned that timing was everything. Reveal too early, and you risk disbelief. Reveal too late, and the damage may already be irreversible. On the corporate front, Kane Ashby's manipulation of Amanda extended beyond simply gathering information from Lily. It encompassed the broader strategic landscape, including Billy Abbott's perception of authority over the AI software project, and Kane's insistence that Amanda ensure Billy believed he had control, while in reality Kane maintained the ultimate power to shape the project's outcomes, demonstrated the subtlety with which Kane orchestrated influence, a mix of psychological leverage, emotional insight, and calculated deception, all designed to ensure that every player in his orbit served the larger objective without realizing they were being guided, and Amanda, fully aware of the stakes, had to navigate this environment with a mix of compliance, subtlety, and personal judgment, aware that any misstep could unravel Kane's delicate architecture and leave her vulnerable to both professional and emotional fallout. As Amanda confronted Lily at Society, she initiated the private discussion with carefully chosen words, acknowledging Kane's regret over the twins and framing it in a way that seemed observational rather than confrontational, probing gently into Lily's feelings, watching for the nuanced responses that would indicate whether Lily's pity still contained the potential for trust, and whether this trust could be leveraged into actionable intelligence for Kane, a task that demanded both patience and acute emotional awareness. Meanwhile, back in the Newman sphere, Claire continued to wrestle with her inability to fully trust Kyle, even as Victoria provided context that framed his actions in a more empathetic light, and as Nate's presence intersected with Kyle's, the triangulation of perspectives created a subtle tension between past grievances and present intentions, highlighting how history, perception, and emotion intertwine to complicate every interaction, making every decision a delicate balance between self-interest, loyalty, and ethical consideration, a balance that none of the characters could maintain effortlessly. Across the city, Michael Baldwin, aware of Phyllis's growing suspicion, walked a fine line between maintaining his personal integrity and adhering to the professional strategies dictated by Kane Ashby, and as he engaged with Phyllis in conversation, his every word was carefully measured, each phrase crafted to appear transparent while withholding crucial pieces of the puzzle, knowing that any misstep could unravel the fragile trust he was attempting to rebuild, even as he wrestled privately with the moral implications of deception, aware that Phyllis's intuition was formidable and that she would not be placated indefinitely by charm alone. Amanda, still in her delicate engagement with Lily, recognized the emotional stakes at play, that each interaction carried the potential to either bridge divides or deepen suspicion, and as she worked to establish rapport, she remained vigilant for the subtlest signs of resistance or receptiveness, knowing that Kane's broader strategy depended on the precision and effectiveness of her performance, that a single miscalculation could compromise not only the mission but also the relationships she was trying to influence, forcing her to weigh her own feelings against the operational objectives she had been tasked to accomplish, a constant negotiation between ethics and expedience. Phyllis, meanwhile, began to piece together fragments of observation, drawing on years of experience reading people, connecting dots that Michael hadn't even realized were visible, and as she considered his hesitation, the selective disclosures, and the particular way he skirted questions about Lauren, she became increasingly certain that Michael's secret was both significant and potentially consequential, something that could alter the dynamics of their personal relationship and, possibly, reverberate through the professional and social circles they inhabited, and this awareness heightened her resolve to confront him, to force the truth into the open, even as she recognized the emotional risks of doing so, aware that confrontation could lead to defensiveness, denial, or, worst of all, the kind of evasive charm Michael had employed in the past to deflect scrutiny. Within this intricate tapestry of alliances, suspicions, and emotional maneuverings, every character's actions were informed by a mix of personal history, strategic calculation, and genuine feeling, creating a web of interdependencies in which the decisions of one person could ripple outward in unexpected ways. And as Phyllis prepared to confront Michael, Amanda carefully navigated Lily's guarded responses. Claire wrestled with her conflicted feelings about Kyle. Victoria provided measured guidance. Nate sought to reconcile past and present tensions, and Kane observed from his strategic vantage point, orchestrating moves behind the scenes while ensuring that each player believed they were acting independently, all of which underscored the central truth of Genoa City. That beneath every polite conversation, every seemingly mundane encounter, lay layers of motivation, calculation, and desire that, when fully understood, revealed the high-stakes drama and intrigue that defined the city and the lives of those who lived in it. And in this moment, as secrets teetered on the edge of revelation, alliances were tested, and hearts were manipulated, the intricate interplay of trust, deceit, and ambition set the stage for revelations that could either heal or destroy, leaving every character poised on the precipice of consequence, fully aware that in this city, nothing stayed hidden forever, and that every choice, every whispered word, and every carefully guarded secret carried the potential to ignite a chain reaction that would reshape lives in ways no one could entirely predict. And as the sun set over Genoa city, casting long shadows across its streets and interiors alike, the tension, the uncertainty, and the simmering emotions of Phyllis, Michael, Amanda, Lily, Claire, Kyle, Victoria, Nate, and Kane converged, each thread of narrative pulling taut, each moment pregnant with possibility, the air thick with anticipation and the unspoken understanding that sooner or later, the carefully maintained balance between truth and deception would shift, revealing what each character had been working to conceal, manipulate, or protect, and in that shifting landscape, the true measure of loyalty, love, ambition, and morality would finally be tested, leaving everyone to confront not only the actions of others but also the depths of their own motivations, regrets, and desires. As the intricate drama of lives intertwined, secrets hidden, and hearts divided continued to unfold in a city that never truly slept, where the past and present collided and every revelation carried the weight of potential consequence, and where the delicate dance of trust, strategy, and emotion would determine who would rise, who would fall, and who would emerge from the shadows forever changed.